Here is a look at the card we're making today, and I'll go over the supplies. I have a piece of basic black cardstock that is cut to 4 1/4 by 11, and I have scored it at the 5 1/2 mark. Here is a scrap of basic gray cardstock, and it's cut to where it will fit within a 4" by 5 1/4 inch space. It doesn't have to be that size, it just needs to fit within that space. And I have a stamped image from the Beautiful You stamp set, and the white paper measures 4 inches by 5 1/4. We're going to create a window in the black cardstock and in the gray cardstock to allow this beautiful lady to show through. Instead of building up onto the front of the card, we're going to build down into the inside of the card, and we'll have a little sentiment that is built up for interest. As you can see, the inside of the card is where we will be doing our adhering. Here is how I decorated the inside of the card. I used Swirly Bird stamp set and all of the new 2017 in colors. They're a very lively group of colors. If I go a little bit too fast or you need me to repeat any of the instructions, please let me know, and also feel free to comment at any time. With our project today, we are going to use some embossing powder that, once adhered to sticky ink, it will allow us to use a heat gun to melt the powder and make a shiny design. I have silver and gold embossing powder today, and I'm going to be mixing them together to use on the project to give a little bit more of a platinum look than a silver and gold separate. To prepare my surface of the paper, I'm using an embossing bag. Stampin' Up! Sells this, called Embossing Buddy. And this is the ink that we're going to be stamping with or adhering to the card. Versamark is a sticky ink. It's very, very sticky, and it dries more or less clear. It allows us to stamp onto the card and sprinkle on some embossing powder, and the powder will stay in place until we use the heat gun to make it shiny. I want to get started on the project, so if you are here watching, please feel free to chime in by typing a comment letting me know who you are and where you're from, and that way we can chat together. To start the project out, I've chosen 2 of the layering ovals framelits dies that will work together to create a window. As you can see in this card, I've created one higher, wider width than the gray, and it's just big enough to hold the image. The smaller of the 2 that I chose is just a big enough oval to hold the stamp design. So to get started on the project, I'm going to set a few things aside, and we're going to first work on the special effects embossing. Knowing where my paper is scored is very important for this project, because I'm going to use an embossing folder as well to get the raised bumps in the card. So to start out, I'm going to use the Softly Falling embossing folder that will work with the Big Shot die cut machine. As you can see, it's a really nice folder. It has a concentration of more dots on one side than it does the other. I want to have the dots higher concentrated at the top and coming down and be more sparse at the bottom. So I'm going to choose to put my cardstock in this way. And because I want the bumps to be raised up, I'll make sure that the side that has the bumps pushed out is on the bottom, and the side that has the little indentations to receive the bumps is on the top. This is really important because you can choose to use the embossing folder in a different way to get a debossed or de-impression instead of emboss. So placing this with the line, the score line here, I'm going to put this into my Big Shot machine and I'm going to run it through completely all the way through. I'm going to step over to my Big Shot machine. There's too many things for me to put directly on camera, so I'm going to choose to put the Big Shot on the side. One thing to remember about the embossing folders is that some of the embossing folders require you to remove the bottom plate, and some of them are you only have to remove a certain portion of your platform. Depending on which platform you're using, it'll work in different ways. Okay, I have just gone through the Big Shot machine. Sorry it took me so long. And as you can see, there is a raised image along with a little bit of fuzz. Get that fuzz off of there. And now I'm finished with this folder and I can put it away. To get the look of the embossing powder that is in streaks, I'm going to take my Versamark ink pad and I'm going to apply it directly down to the cardstock. Before you use any type of embossing products, the best idea to start off with is to take your embossing buddy and completely run it over your cardstock. This will make sure that your embossing powder sticks to only the places that you want it to stick. This particular design isn't going to matter as much because it is kind of a more abstract, but if I were using a stamped image, it would be very important, particularly on black cardstock because everything shows up on black. So here is how we're going to create the special effects. First, I'm going to mix my embossing powders together because I want to have the embossing powders ready whenever I have the Versamark applied to my cardstock. Knowing that these embossing powders will not be reused and put back into my can is going to help me make sure that I don't waste too much powder. So I'm just going to put about a half a teaspoon worth. This is silver embossing powder. And now I'm going to add about a half a teaspoon of gold until I have an equal amount, or as close to equal as I can get. And I'm going to mix these two together with a little scrap of cardstock. I'm using this coffee filter because it's something that I can use to hold everything together, and I can toss it whenever I need to. I reuse my coffee filters a couple of times with the embossing powders until I can see that it's either losing its shape and form or it has some embossing powder stuck to it. Okay, I feel like I've got these embossing powders mixed well enough now. So having that ready, I'm going to apply the Versamark ink pad directly down to my cardstock. I'm going to use a very light hand. In fact, I can even hold this in my hand, and I'm going to use the corner edge to drag it down lightly, just to touch these little bumps. I don't want to actually touch what the base part is of the card. I just want to touch the bumps. So I'm lightly going over. Even though it's not intentional, I will definitely still be touching the card, and that's kind of just the way the pressure works. I can try my best, but it's not going to be perfect. But the great thing about this type of a technique is that every time you do something like this, it's an original work. It always is going to look different. As long as there's enough of the Versamark sticky ink in place, it's safe to move on to the next step. I think I've got enough of it covered here. So now we're going to bring the embossing powders into play. And I'm going to hold the cardstock over this coffee filter so that it will definitely not spill this embossing powder everywhere. Here's a funny story about my youngest son. He is infatuated with embossing powder and tries at every opportunity to get the embossing powder out of the little can. Usually I'm left cleaning it up because he wants it to be on the floor or on one of his trays. So if I hold it over this coffee filter, then I'm able to keep it in the area and not have so much get onto my workspace. So I can see already where the stamp pad has touched the cardstock, and I can see where the stamp pad has just touched the raised bumps. Either way, it works out okay, because I have a paintbrush ready to go, and I can brush away the embossing powder that would be in places that I don't desire. I don't want to have any embossing powder on the fold line, so I'm brushing it away. And I don't want to have extra embossing powder laying on the cardstock, so I'm going to sweep it away in the concentrated areas in a downward motion. And this is going to give me the look and illusion of falling rain. It almost seems a little bit too easy to get the look of rain or to get a special effect on your card, but it really is just this simple. And I'm even going over some of the dots areas that do have in the embossing powder adhered to it, so that I can get maybe a dot next to an empty space to give me that illusion of rain. It's the downward motion that is going to create this effect. I'm trying to use a very light hand on the paintbrush, and by tapping the side of the cardstock with the handle of the paintbrush, it helps get some of the stray powders off of the card. So now I have the embossing powder in the right spot. Then I'm going to use my heat gun and I'm going to set it into place. I have my heat gun set on the high setting, which is number 2. The embossing powder melts very quickly, but it melts even faster when your gun is preheated. I did not preheat my heat gun this time, so you're getting to see the full experience of how long it takes to get it to the right temperature. I'm starting to see quite a bit of sparkle here. I hope you can see it as well. If I can't tell exactly where the powder has been turned, then I try to make my cardstock go in the direction of the light so that I can see whether or not there is a spot that's not so shiny. I think I've gotten all of the spots. Sorry about the noise, but it's a necessary thing whenever we use a heat gun. So the next step in this process, as I clear away some of the stray embossing powder, is to make the window portion of the card where we can see our stamped image. In the package of the ovals, there's many different sizes, so you could choose to make a larger focal point image or a smaller one. Here's the image that I'm using, so I will use this as a guide to be able to know exactly where to place it. I've already pre-cut this piece of panel down 1/4 of an inch from the standard card base size, so I know that if I center it here, this is exactly where it's going to be placed. The black cardstock needs to be cut with the larger of the 2 ovals. So I found that if I take and place the larger of the 2 ovals and hold it in place with my finger and gently slide out the focal image, then I'll know exactly where to place. Now I can take this to the Big Shot machine and I can cut the oval. So we already have the look of the special effect on our card. And now we're just creating the peek-through window. I'm left with an extra piece, and this can be used for another type of project. You can turn it over and just have the deboss side, or you can use the special effects side. Or you could actually use it as a scoop for the embossing powder. To determine exactly where to place this gray piece, I'm going to put the piece of gray cardstock behind, making sure that I center it as best as I can so that it won't show through on the back of the card once it's adhered. And I'm going to place the smaller of the 2 dies that I selected here onto the card. It should fit just inside and have an even space on all 4 directions. Holding the die down in place, I'm going to remove this black card base And now I know exactly where I want to place my oval. If worried about where it needs to be placed, a piece of washi tape or a post-it note is great to hold it in the spot that it's in. So I've got a post-it note here. I'll measure it again just to show. Here's where it goes. We have an even distance on all sides. Can remove the cardstock and hold this in place. And now I can be assured that this die is not going to move anywhere when I put it through the machine. And I now have another extra gray die cut. I can use that on another project. Because this is the portion that I want to use. This is going to help me make a frame. Once it's placed behind the black, then I will get the look of the inside lining matte piece. So you see how easy it is to create a layer for the inside to help frame an image. And then once we start putting these together, here is our focal point. So now it's time I can stop doing things with the front of my card and I can burnish my fold. I'm going to use a bone folder to do this today. Once I get it in place, I'm going to burnish the fold. If you're just joining, please feel free to type in who you are and if you'd like to say hello. So we're going to adhere everything on the inside of the card. I want to use the side of the die cut negative space that has the little beveled image of the die, and that way I'll be able to see it through the front. So I can use my fast fuse so that I know it's going to stay in place. Okay, fast fuse. This is the strongest adhesive. It is so strong. So I've got this ready to go on the image of the lady. Now I'm going to adhere the fast fuse down to the cardstock. I should have done it in reverse, but I still had the opportunity to do it now. So this is going to go on the inside of my card. Where it gives me a nice framed feature. Just that simple. Sometimes you can get some kind of a special effect in the easiest way. Now I'm ready to adhere this piece, so I'll add a little bit of extra adhesive. There she goes. So I want her to be adhered to the inside of the front of the card. So that's why the adhesive is going on the front of the stamped image, and it's going to show through this window. Because I placed everything ahead of time, I know that I'm going to have 1/8 of an inch on each side, And this looks nice and neat on the inside of the card as well. And here she is. And we have the image of rain, or it can be just a splashy, classy looking dot. It reminds me of a sparkle, like New Year's sparkle. And now we can go on to creating the sentiment. The sentiment is created with the Pretty Label Punch, and this is one of the, I think it's one of the what would be the right word? It's going to be the come from behind product out of the new catalog. There is going to be a tremendous amount of projects created with this punch and with the Label Me Pretty stamp set. The Label Me Pretty stamp set has got many different ways that we can use it, which is fantastic because I like to be able to use my products for them to be as versatile as possible. So I'm going to stamp on a piece of white. Just a scrap is good enough, and I'm going to use the basic black. I'll be using this image and You're the Best. It has a really nice font, which I think will be attractive with the drawn lines of the Beautiful You image. This is a standard basic black. I'm just checking to make sure that I get a nice coverage on my stamp. And there's step one. Step two is to add the middle portion, and it looks like we've got a couple of options. We could do Thank You for Caring or You're the Best. I like the idea of saying You're the Best because I really like the font. This is Lemon Lime Twist. It's a yummy color. I'm going to center it here and stamp and move on to the punch. So how are you liking this project? This is so easy to use this punch. Here it goes. There we go. Now we're able to toss this scrap and we can adhere this to our card. At this point you can use some thread and put around the back so that there is some spirals of thread. You could also choose to put some sparkle embellishments. So many different possibilities. And this can be placed on anywhere on the card. I chose to put it at the bottom corner because that's where my eye tends to rest. I'm partially putting it over the die cut window to bring your eye down to this area. And that's basically it for this special effect. So what do you guys think? How do you enjoy seeing some kind of special effects used on a card? I definitely went much lighter with this version. This one has more sparkle and more bling. So as you can see, this technique is very easy and you could use it with any type of embossing folder. If you have an embossing folder that has any kind of a raised portion, such as little stars or polka dots, then it's very easy to take your Versamark ink pad, apply it directly to the raised or embossed portion of the cardstock, sprinkle on a little bit of your embossing powder, melt it with your heat gun, and you are ready to go. It's just that simple. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. I appreciate your support, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the video description or contact me by email at jennystampsup@gmail.com. To purchase any of the supplies for this project, visit my website at jennystampsup.com and click on Shop Now. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!
Thanks for watching the video. Have a good day!